Not Micronesia. Okay, yeah, that season did change the game.
Survivor sucks. Survivor sucks. I can't believe you watch the same seasons over and over and over. It's the same thing.
Well, not Micronesia.
Okay, yeah, that season did change the game.
If you saw the title of this video, then you know what we're here to do today. Just to preface everything, I am more of a recent Survivor watcher that has only gotten into watching the show in the past handful of years. I never really watched it when I was a kid. Unlike Big Brother, which is a show that I have been in the online community for quite a while. I've been watching Big Brother since forever practically. And as I have gotten older, I've only gotten more into the show as I have become somebody who seeks out live feed updates if I'm not watching the live feeds myself. With all that being said, I never really got into Survivor when I was younger and only more recently started watching seasons, as if you're part of the people online who watch reality competition shows, you see there's a big Survivor fan base. And what I've always wanted to do is go back and watch some of these classic and fan favorite seasons. So today I have decided to watch Survivor Micronesia for the first time. And I picked that season because when you talk to people that like Survivor, they always list it as one of their top seasons. Micronesia is season 16 of Survivor, and it was also at the time called Fans versus Favorites. And I believe it aired around 2008 to give you a sense of the time period and how old this season actually is. Before we get started, I also just wanted to preface that this season is fans versus favorites, meaning that there is a bunch of returning players, but most of them I have no context for because I have not seen their seasons. Actually, pretty much all of them I haven't seen their seasons, but I know some of them as I have heard their names or I have heard stuff about their gameplay, but I've never actually seen it myself. I have seen Parvati in Winners at War, but that is kind of the only Survivor context I have of Parvati. I have seen Suri on Big Brother, of course, and the Traitors and stuff, and I do know some stuff that has happened to Suri on her own seasons of Survivor. Like, I do know her kind of getting screwed over because everybody had an advantage. I know about that. But as far as what the favorites games looked like before coming into this season, I have no real context. So I just wanted to say that before I get started, because there are some references to who these people are or how they played the game in prior seasons within this season, but I can't really attest to any of this, whether this information is correct or is this just how other people perceive them, simply because I do not have the full context for how they played their individual games. So give me some leeway when it comes to that. But with all that being said, let's just get on into it. In episode 1, we meet the fans and the favorites, and immediately Jeff tells them that there are 2 immunity idols hidden on this beach that they all have to swim to. There's one for the fans tribe and there's one for the favorites tribe, and whichever 2 people get those will be safe from their very first tribal councils, but those idols can only be used at that tribal council. As we're watching everybody race and swim to this beach, there is somebody doing the butterfly. And I just want to say, why are we doing all that? Who is doing that? I don't remember exactly who it was, but somebody most definitely was doing the most and was doing the butterfly. My question is why? If it's a race to get to this beach, just swim normally. I know the butterfly is not the fastest form of swimming to the beach, okay? So maybe instead of showing off, we should actually be trying to get that immunity idol. While on the beach, Johnny Fairplay actually finds the immunity idol first, except for he realizes he picks up the one for the fans tribe before he can get to his own favorites immunity idol. Yao Man actually spots his mistake and ends up getting to the immunity idol first, giving Yao Man immunity for the first tribal council. Yao Man then points out Johnny Fairplay's dropped immunity idol to Kathy from the fans tribe, who picks it up so she has immunity with the fans for her first tribal council. Then almost immediately at not only the very beginning of this season, but pretty much the very beginning of this episode, we get probably our biggest tell to the fact that this season aired in 2008, because when one of the players is describing everybody on the fans tribe, they refer to Chet, who happens to be a gay man, as queer eye for the straight guy. It is very weird the way the show kind of plays in and portrays this as almost like this was Chet's one defining personality trait. We see a whole scene of Kathy almost treating Chet like this novelty item, saying that she's never actually had a gay friend before, to which Chet probably very factually tells her that she probably has and she just doesn't know it. But this was one of the biggest whoa, this was definitely 2008 moments for me, in the way that a lot of these characters kind of address Chet, especially at the beginning of the game.
Oh, dear. Yeah, I don't have a problem with it, but I've never been friends with a homosexual. You know what? I hope you can be my first gay man friend.
Well, I absolutely will.
Because I've never had a gay man friend.
I bet you have, but you just don't know.
Kathy also, on her own, is a very kooky character. Almost immediately after her first kind of weird interaction with Chet, her first interaction with another tribe mate, Tracy, is also pretty weird, as she immediately starts talking about Tracy's breast implants like the second that they meet.
I've never seen implants, ever. I've never seen them up close. Who said I had them?
Real quick, lady.
So Kathy is definitely a character, and she will be a character for the rest of her time on this season. On the favorites tribe, filled with all returning players, we immediately see two showmances start coupling up right away in Parvati and James and Amanda and Ozzy. They also kind of form this foursome alliance group consisting of their two showmances. We get a segment of the favorites being able to easily set up their camp in their shelter right away, while the fans who have never done this before are having a significantly harder time. They wasted a lot of time and aren't able to get their shelter fully up before nightfall, and then they have a miserable time in their poorly made shelter that night as they get poured on, and Kathy cries already. I think this segment is really playing into the fact that the favorites have done this before while the fans have not. So the favorites know a little bit about what they're doing, but I do also want to mention that we will see later on the specific beach that the favorites were on at the beginning of the game was like the beach to be. Meanwhile, the fans got one of the worst beaches. There's just no place for them to make camp. They don't have much beach area. There's a lot of rocks. Meanwhile, on the favorites camp, they have like this really cool cave that kind of keeps them dry most of the time, and they all kind of sleep in the cave area. So while I do think that the favorites have done this before and they knew what they were doing, I also have to give the fans a little bit of leeway, as we all know that their beach was quite horrible. The next morning on the favorites tribe, Amy, Yao Man, Jonathan, and Eliza form an alliance. As they are already worried about the showman's foursome, they consider pulling in Johnny Fairplay as their fifth because they need at least one more number to outnumber the showman's foursome. Yao Man is also able to start a fire using his glasses, meaning that not only did the favorites have a pretty good shelter, but they also got a fire started. However, even though the favorites had an easier time setting up their camp, the fans do in fact win the first immunity challenge, sending the favorites to the very first tribal council. After the immunity challenge back on the favorites beach, Johnny Fairplay is telling everybody that he wants to go home to be with his pregnant girlfriend. At first, some of the members of the Jonathan and Eliza Alliance are thinking that maybe Fair Play is working with the Showman's crew, and this could be a ploy to get them to vote for him, while he is going to be another vote for them to possibly get Eliza out. However, it turns out that Johnny Fairplay did mean what he said when he wanted to go home, and at Tribal Council, everybody just easily votes him out. Now, I do have a question about this because I have no context for prior seasons of Johnny Fairplay, but from the way that other people describe him in this first episode, it seems like on his original season, he either got some irresponsible, moronic guy edit, but also mixed in with a little bit of annoying villainous edit, if I'm on the right track. And I am wondering if this whole thing of him wanting to be voted out and him coming on the show just to be asked to be voted out first was all an elaborate ruse to kind of fix his public perception, because from what I was gathering from the way that other people talked about him, his public perception may not have been super great. And I'm wondering if this whole I need to be home because now I'm a responsible guy who's going to be a dad and I want to be there for my girlfriend was all a part of his plan of going on the show, telling everybody he's going to be a dad now and looking more like a responsible, caring guy in order to fix his perception of him that he gained probably from his first season of Survivor. Let me know if anyone else agrees that this is true or if I might be on the wrong track, but that's just something I was thinking of because I was wondering why he would go all the way there just to ask everybody to vote him out. If he wanted to stick around for the game, he could have, and honestly, he knew this before going in, so if he was worried about how his girlfriend was going to do without him there, he could have just said no to going on Survivor again. So that's why I'm kind of wondering if this was all kind of a plan for him to fix his public persona and his public perception. Moving on to episode 2, we open back up on the Fans tribe, and even though they won their Flint in the first immunity challenge, they are having trouble actually starting a fire. Kathy is complaining about them not having a good enough shelter. We see that Tracy, Kathy, and Chet are on the outs with the rest of the Fan tribe as they are the 3 older people. We also get a segment of Jason complaining that none of those 3 do anything productive, and Jason finds shelter in a cave but tells them that he doesn't want Tracy, Kathy, and Chet sleeping in his shelter. It is after this moment that Tracy, Kathy, and Chet really realize how on the outs they are with the rest of the tribe. The Fans tribe is finally able to make a fire, and they end up making 2 separate shelters because the rest of the people want to be separate from Tracy, Kathy, and Chet, only even more furthering the divide amongst this tribe. I actually found it interesting because before, when they were having trouble getting their fire started, the contestants say that they are anxious because they just need to get some water in them. And as a newer Survivor watcher, this actually shocked me, that the fact that they do not have a water well to actually drink water, and the only way that they can get water on Survivor is by making a fire to boil the water. And I have not seen this since I've only been watching the newer seasons, and it kind of blew my mind that they put these people out here and they don't give them access to clean water, especially since it took almost 2 days for the Fans tribe to make a fire, meaning that they went a long time out in the hot sun and basically dehydrated. I looked this up to see, and actually there was some seasons in which multiple people fainted from heat stroke, and one person even had to be medically evacuated due to severe dehydration. And to me, it just makes sense that they should have always had given the contestants access to water the entire time to avoid so many people having issues because of simple dehydration. And maybe some people will say, well, that's not real Survivor, but if you want to make a TV show that lasts 39 days, you gotta at least give people some access to water, in my opinion. Also, I read about another season in which the cast found their own water source, thinking that they could drink that water, but the water wasn't actually clean, and a bunch of them got sick from that too. So all this to say, it was just shocking for me to see that the earlier seasons did not give these people access to water. To me, it would feel like a recipe for disaster with production, because that is probably the quickest way that people are going to start running into health issues, if you know what I'm saying. Moving on, still back at the Vange tribe, Mikey B and Mary have a little bit of a pre-showmance type thing, but Mikey B says that he can flirt with Mary to use her to get whatever he wants. I believe the words he uses are get her in his back pocket. I'm rolling my eyes at the fact that these men so naively think that they can control the woman on the tribe, which later on we will see it is most definitely the other way around. Back over on the Favorites tribe, Ozzy and Amanda are full on making out at night. So the showmances have escalated pretty quickly. Suri is also clocking the new showmances. She has a conversation with Jonathan about how dangerous these two showmances can be. Also, the whole Ozzy and Amanda thing being so open with their showmance is so funny to me, because just the previous day, Ozzy was saying how he needs to stay away from Amanda so people don't think that they're together. And then it's like the very next day, they're full on making out in front of everybody. So I guess that went out the window pretty quickly.
We just gotta stay apart as long as possible, because if it becomes obvious to the group, then I'm gonna have a giant target on my back.
At the next immunity challenge, the favorites win, and by winning, they also get to choose one person from each tribe to send to Exile Island. Now, in this season on Exile Island, there is one idol hidden, and there is clues that they have to do to find the idol. So they may be able to find it in their time being on Exile Island, or it might take them a few trips to be able to find the idol. But all this to say, the favorites choose Suri and Kathy to send to Exile Island for the first time. Because the fans lost the immunity challenge, back on their beach, Mikey is trying to form a plan to split the votes, because he is worried that Kathy might find a second idol on Exile Island. Remember, she does have safety at the first tribal council because of the idol she found on the first day. Joel initially wants to go after Chet, but when Mikey starts trying to tell people about his plans to split the vote, Joel is immediately annoyed, because Joel and Mikey are going to be having a alpha male bro off over on the Vange tribe for their time in this game, as both of them want to be the big alpha male bro leader who is calling the shots, and Joel is immediately jealous of Mikey, who has been telling people what to do in the vote, which makes him change his mind about wanting to get Chet out to wanting to go after Mary, because if you remember, Mikey and Mary have this kind of pre-showmancy type of thing, and he wants to go after Mary in order to weaken Mikey. Eric asked Joel why aren't they just going after Mikey, since that's the guy it seems that Joel has a problem with. But Joel then informs Eric that he thinks they need Mikey to win the challenges. And this is where I get so annoyed in the game of Survivor, people just assuming that women are going to be lesser at the challenges than them. It is so frustrating, because we haven't really seen much of how people have been competing in the challenges since there has only been 2. And the only thing that we do know is that Chet is not very athletic, and he's probably the weakest link in that sense when it comes to the challenges. Instead of going after Mikey, who is the person that Joel has a problem with, he is in fact going after Mary, because he thinks that the tribe needs Mikey because Mikey is a man, so he must be better at challenges than Mary. What I mean to say by all of this is Mary hasn't really given a poor performance at any of the challenges so far, so the only reason why these men see her as a weaker link is just by assuming so because she is a woman. That is kind of what is frustrating about watching this and seeing some biases pop up. However, because the boys are fighting, because Joel and Mikey are fighting, it gives the three that were on the outs, that being Tracy, Chet, and Kathy, the opportunity to slip in, stay another week, and to drive a wedge within the larger alliance of the tribe. At the first tribal council, Jeff blatantly calls out Chet for doing so poorly in the immunity challenge, which kind of shocked me. And I know Jeff can be kind of annoying in the way that sometimes he addresses the contestants and so blatantly points out stuff about their games, but doing so bluntly at the tribal council seemed crazy to me, because I'm thinking, shouldn't he be a little more neutral? Isn't his role at tribal council to get people to talk and not to blatantly call out like, Chet, you did bad. Don't you think people are going to vote you out because you're so bad at the challenges?
All due respect, that's giving yourself a little more credit than I would. It took you forever to get back to the beach.
Okay.
What's going through your head as you feel the pressure of 9 other people going, ugh?
It just felt like a comment that could have swayed people. If I'm on the tribe, and I know Chet is a weaker link, but I wasn't really looking at him like that, having Jeff, the host of the show, basically say this at tribal council, I think I could be swayed to vote for him. Why does it feel like Jeff was playing the game there? Why does it feel like Jeff was trying to sway people? All this to say, Kathy uses the immunity idol she got from the first day on herself to stay safe, and the tribe ends up going with Joel's plan to get Mary out in order to weaken Mikey, which works, and Mary is voted off the fans' tribe. Moving on to episode 3, Mikey is clearly upset with Joel about him going behind his back to take out Mary. In this conversation, Mikey refers to the others who voted with Joel as 4 girls and a kid, and Chet would be included as a girl. To which I say, another big yikes moment to the way some of these other contestants treat Chet and talk about Chet in regards to the fact that he is gay. But overall, now we have this big Mikey versus Joel thing going on the fans tribe, to which I say, the boys are fighting. The boys are fighting. They're having an alpha male bro off, and they both want to prove that they are the most bro alpha male leader of the tribe. So they don't like each other because they both want to be the single alpha male on the tribe. Back over on the favorites tribe, we now have 2 separate alliances of 4. One being the 2 showmances, and the other 4 being the crew of Amy, Eliza, Jonathan, and Yao Man, with Suri in the perfect position in the direct middle of the tribe. It seems like both sides are trying to pull in Suri because they need her as a 5th vote to go after the other side. Suri at this point is still playing the middle, as she still has not decided which side she actually wants to go with, but she basically has all the power at this point on that tribe, because whichever side she decides to go with is going to decide who goes home next in the game, basically. The next challenge is a rewards challenge, and each tribe is given these catalogs where they can choose 3 separate things that they would want to play for in a reward. So at the challenge, both tribes are playing to win different things that they thought they needed. They basically play this capture the flag style game with these heavy sacks, and the game gets actually pretty aggressive. This also kind of shocked me as a person that is new to watching Survivor, because I haven't seen anything be so outwardly aggressive, where when I was watching this and I was watching people get thrown around and smashed around, don't they want these people to be okay to play the rest of the game? But they're gonna come up with a challenge where they're basically allowed to throw each other around and slam into each other. It just seems like a recipe for injuries, if you know what I'm talking about. For instance, in this game, we see a moment where Eric whacks Eliza in the head with one of these heavy bags, and this moment seemed kind of purposeful to me, as Eric had already gotten the bag across the finish line where it needed to go, and he whacks Eliza with it afterwards when their moment of fighting was already over. It just seemed like a dirty move. And then later on, we see Eric toss Amanda over his head. Just insane all around. I never seen such an aggressive challenge played on Survivor. Now I kind of know why they don't play this game anymore, because it just seems like a recipe for injuries. The favorites end up winning this rewards challenge, and they get to choose 2 more people to go to Exile Island. They choose Kathy again from the fans tribe and Amy from their own tribe. That night, it's pouring rain again, and we see how the favorites have a much easier night as, like I said, they have a cave that keeps them pretty dry, as well as they won a tarp in the rewards challenge, which keeps them even more dry, whereas the fans have a pretty miserable night with their poorly made shelter in a torrential downpour. But even after this miserable night, the fans are able to pull out a win at the next immunity challenge, meaning that the favorites will once again be going to tribal council. Back on the favorites tribe, Suri is trying to push her agenda as the person in the middle. She is very worried and scared about Yao Man and sees him as a dangerous player, so she would like them to go after Yao Man. To do this, it means that she would have to work with the Showman's crew, since Yao Man is part of the Jonathan, Eliza, and Amy alliance. The Showman's crew, however, wants Eliza out, but Suri is the one that they need to pull in for the 5th vote, so Suri really has the say to push her agenda among them, as if they don't want to vote with her, she can just hop over to the other alliance and vote one of them out. So it looks like if the Showman's wants to pull in Suri, they're going to have to do what she wants and get Yao Man out instead of Eliza. The other alliance that is also fighting for Suri's vote, led by Jonathan basically, is trying to pull Suri in, and they all want to vote out Parvati from the Showman's crew. As Jonathan and Yao Man are really trying to pull in Suri, Suri tells them that the same arguments they are using to pull her in, the other alliance of Showmances is using to also try to pull her in. They're trying to say that the Showmances are close to each other and are always going to choose each other over her, to which Suri argues that Jonathan and Yao Man are just as close and have a duo, and they're always going to be closer to each other over her. So their arguments don't exactly work on her, as either way, Suri is going to have to deal with some very strong duos. Back with the Showmances, Parvati smartly realizes that her, Ozzy, Amanda, and James are going to have to change their votes and vote with Suri if they want to stay in the game. Suri basically has all the power, so they will not be able to get Eliza out because Suri is not going to vote with them. And if they all want to stick around in the game, they're going to have to give up and vote out Yao Man with Suri. This angers Ozzy, as he doesn't want to vote out Yao Man, he wants to vote out Eliza, but Parvati is the only one that realizes that in order for them all to stay in the game, they are going to have to go with Suri, as she is the one in the middle, so she's the one essentially that gets to call the shots in this particular tribal council. Even after Parvati tells this to Ozzy, he still pulls her aside, and the Showman's crew practically begged Suri to vote out Eliza. Over on the other alliance, Jonathan and Eliza are hopeful that the confusion among this other alliance will cause them to have split votes, whereas they can have their votes 4 strong against Parvati, and maybe their plan to get Parvati out will actually work, since the rest of the Showman's crew doesn't really want to go with Suri in her plan of voting out Yao Man. At Tribal Council, we get an amazing Suri quote as she is arguing with Jonathan, who is telling her that it's a bad idea to go with the Showmances, as she's going to be the 5th person at the bottom, into which she says that she came into their alliance as the 5th person at the bottom. She tells Jonathan, "And I'm supposed to trust you? I don't trust you. Point blank, period."
I did, but I don't trust you. Point blank, period.
Which is one of Suri's iconic lines. I feel like in this season, she has a lot of really great lines because everything she says is so true. And after all these arguments, we see that Suri was able to get her way as Yao Man gets voted out, and the Showman's crew was pretty much forced to vote with her in order for them to stay in the game. At this tribal council, Parvati received 2 votes and Suri received 1 vote. Moving on to episode 4, we find out that Amy was the one who wrote Suri's name down at the prior tribal council. Jonathan is angry that he couldn't make Suri vote the way he wanted her to, and they get into another argument. Then we go back over and see how the fans tribe is faring, and we see that a lot of them are talking about how they feel like Chet is not pulling his own weight amongst providing at camp and also in the competitions. Back over on the favorites beach, a lot of the contestants are upset that they were not able to get rid of Eliza, as Eliza is now sick, and a lot of the other tribe members now see her as a liability, as she is not going to be much help in challenges. James is especially upset that they had to bend to Cerie's will in order to get Yao Min out. Next, we see there is another reward challenge in which the favorites win. They win 4 chickens, and they decide to send Kathy again and Ozzy to Exile Island. Now, if you've been keeping track, this is Kathy's 3rd time in a row being sent to Exile Island, so you would think she would have the ability to get the idol by now, but she has just completely given up. She's completely disheartened by the whole thing, which to me is so shocking, because through her prior times on Exile Island, she's already been through the first handful of clues, and there's not that many more clues left. She has to know that she is so close. I mean, the clues are exhausting, as it's just basically a lot of running around for the contestants to do, but Kathy already did that in her first time on Exile Island. It doesn't make sense to me why she has completely given up on looking. To my knowledge, the clues have stayed the same for that particular idol, as no one has found it. So I don't know why Kathy wouldn't have started where she left off last in order to find the idol, because she was so close. She already did all the clues. But with all that being said, Ozzy does go off to look for the idol, and he ends up finding it. Ozzy then gets to work creating a fake idol to leave in the place that he found the real idol. So whoever gets to Exile Island next will think that they have found an idol, but in fact they will have then found a fake idol. This is so hilarious to me, and I will bring this up later in the game as this will come into play. The fake idol Ozzy makes just looks so completely ridiculous. It doesn't even look like an idol at all. And I've seen people make fake idols on Survivor before. At least they try to make it look like it is something to show and use as an idol. Literally, Ozzy just gets a stick and tries to carve it, but at the end of the day, it looks like a stick. And I'm thinking, there's no way anyone is going to believe that this stick is a real idol, but I will be proven wrong. Just some subtle foreshadowing. Back over on the favorites camp, we see that Eliza is feeling like she is at the bottom of the tribe, so she starts to get crafty and try to do anything she can in order to stay in the game, which means that she starts to pitch Jonathan, one of her own alliance members, to Parvati, somebody who was working against her. However, this won't matter just yet, because at the immunity challenge, the favorites do win, sending the fans to tribal council. After the immunity challenge, back on the fans beach, Chet is kind of checking out of the game. He thinks he's next to go anyways, and he's kind of giving up the fight. But Tracy does not want Chet to give up just yet, because if you remember, her, Kathy, and Chet are the 3 that are on the outs within the tribe, and she knows that once Chet leaves, it's only a matter of time before they then pick off her and Kathy. So Tracy is going to try to do whatever she can to keep Chet in the game. Tracy, seeing that Joel and Mikey have been having an alpha male who is the real leader bro off for most of the time, decides to try to drive a bigger wedge between those 2 guys. So she goes to Joel and tries to convince him to vote out Mikey. This being very smart in order for Tracy to stay around in the game. I do think on the fans tribe, Tracy is a player that was heavily underestimated, as she was really gaming hard to stay in the game each week. At tribal council, Tracy makes a very true statement, saying that her, Kathy, and Chet didn't compete in the immunity challenge and the tribe still lost. So the sentiment that they are the weakest 3 and the ones causing the tribes to lose isn't actually an accurate statement.
Can I say something? I didn't compete, and Chet didn't compete, and Kathy didn't compete, and they still lost. So tell me how you can take blame for that.
In the end, Mikey gets 5 votes to Chet's 3 votes, causing Mikey to be voted out. So I guess Tracy's plan worked, as she was able to see that Joel was just too egotistical to want to keep Mikey around any longer. We start off episode 5 with Jason being annoyed with the rest of his tribe of fans that they didn't vote out Chet because he sees Chet as the weak link on their tribe. Back over at the favorites camp, we see that the favorites have decided to eat one of their chickens, chickens in order to get energy, but keep the other 3 chickens around to use them for their eggs. We also see Ozzy hiding his idol back at camp, and he decides to tell his alliance of James, Parvati, and Amanda that he indeed did find the idol on Exile Island. Then it's tribe swap time. That's right, everyone is going to be mixed up as 2 captains are randomly drawn, and then they get to do a schoolyard style pick in order to pick the rest of their tribe. Now, as a new fan, I have never seen this before. I've only ever seen the tribes be of random draw. So seeing that they actually get to have some sort of say and use a little bit of strategy in the way that they pick their tribes was very interesting to me. The rules were, though, that they had to pick somebody from the opposite tribe every time. So the captain would get the first pick, having to pick someone from the opposite tribe, and then that person would be able to go next and make the second pick, having to pick someone from the captain's tribe. This would cause both tribes to be equal among having the same amount of fans to favorites. Ozzy ends up being very lucky as he gets chosen as a captain, which means he gets to go back to his own beach, because I'm not sure if he took the idol with him. As we saw, he was hiding the idol just that morning. I'm not sure if he took it with him in his bag. So this could have been very bad news for Ozzy, as he could have ended up on the other tribe and on the other beach without his idol. The new tribes end up being, for the Orange tribe, Natalie, James, Alexis, Jonathan, Jason, Parvati, Kathy, and Eliza. And on the Purple tribe, Ozzy, Joel, Amanda, Eric, Amy, Tracy, Suri, and Chet. At the next rewards challenge, we see that the Orange tribe is able to win the reward. There is a very interesting scene in this challenge between Joel and Chet, who both end up on the Purple tribe. They basically play a game of tag, except for 2 people are tied together the entire time, and Chet and Joel end up being tied together, to which we see Joel dragging Chet around through this challenge. There's a moment where Chet gets slammed into the ground. He hits his head on a branch. Joel is being so aggressive in this challenge, and later on when Chet tells him that he hit his head pretty bad, Joel replies that he does not care.
I hit my head.
I don't care.
I know.
And I am most definitely not a Joel fan. I do not like this man. I think he is way too intense and too aggressive and very egotistical. I know some people would probably be frustrated being partnered with Chet, as Chet sort of gets tired in challenges and then starts to slowly give up or just kind of shut down and stuff, and that could be frustrating. But I can't really imagine anyone else dragging him around to the point of him being just absolutely slammed into things. I think Joel was being a little bit too aggressive, because no matter whether you were slamming Chet into things or not, Chet was still, going to cause you to lose the challenge anyways. I just think it was a little too aggressive, and it was pretty bad, him basically telling Chet that he doesn't care that he slammed his head into a branch. Back on the Orange tribe, they go back to the fans' original beach. Now, if you remember, I told you how bad this beach was, and the favorites that are now on the Orange tribe are quickly seeing how much more this beach sucks than the one that they originally had, as they are trying to cook their food that they won in the rewards challenge, and there is just no space really to set up camp, and the tide comes by and washes away their fire. The favorites that are now on Orange are quickly learning how much better they had it back on their old original beach. Over on the Purple tribe, Ozzy and Joel are talking about how they either want to get rid of Chet or Suri. Of course, Ozzy wants to get rid of Chet, as he is part of the original fans tribe, and Joel wants to get rid of Suri, who is an original favorite. To which I say, why do these men always think they're the ones in charge that get to make the decisions for everybody? Back at the Orange Beach, the new to the tribe favorites members help the original Orange fans members move their camp to a better spot and set up a better shelter for the whole tribe. While on the Purple tribe, Amanda catches a pretty sizable shark for them to eat. At the immunity challenge, Jeff says this to the Orange tribe during their challenge.
All right, you need to stop bitching and start throwing. Just hitting him as hard as we can, Jeff.
And it turns out the Orange Tribe will win immunity. Since the Purple Tribe now has to go to Tribal Council, we see how Joel and Ozzy's conversation from earlier is now coming back into play, except for Joel hates Chet so much that he is willing to turn on the fans and vote Chet out, losing numbers for himself. Suri starts to see that everybody wants to get Chet out as they view him as a weaker player, and she wants to keep Chet around because she knows that if Chet gets voted out, she is probably seen as one of the next weaker players and she is going to be next to go. So she starts to form a plan in order to keep Chet in the game. Suri starts to push for Joel to go and Chet to stay, as the favorites can use Chet as a number for them, while Joel is never going to be a number for them as he wants to be the one in control of the game. And finally, at Tribal Council, we see that Suri once again got her way and Joel is voted out. Yay! I was so excited to see Suri's plan work and Joel be voted out, as I was really annoyed with Joel throughout this show as a viewer, as he was just super egotistical the whole time. He was really aggressive and it was annoying to watch. He's one of those type of guys that throws a big temper tantrum whenever he loses a challenge. So yeah, I like that Suri, using her wit, was able to basically push for Joel to leave, and it was fun to watch. In episode 6, it's the next day, and back on the Purple Tribe, we see Tracy. If you remember, I said Tracy was a very underrated player. Here, Tracy is trying to rally up all the former fans, as she can see that they have lost a number already, and now the favorites have the majority on their tribe and they can start picking them off. Unfortunately, she had to vote with everybody at the last Tribal Council in order to save Chet, because it was probably either going to be Joel or Chet. So she did have to vote Joel out, but now that Chet is still in the game, she wants to rally all of the former fans in order to stay strong and keep their numbers. At the next reward challenge, Orange wins the reward again, and they choose Chet and Jason to be sent to Exile Island. Back on Orange, something I didn't mention in the prior episode is that Jonathan got a cut on his leg in one of the challenges, and later on that night a doctor came to give him stitches. However, I think it might have been a little bit too late in terms of cleaning the wound, because the wound got infected, and in this episode we see that the infection has only grown and started to spread into more parts of his leg, to which a doctor comes to look at him and basically tells Jonathan that he needs to be medically evacuated off the island in order to give him surgery before his infection spreads even worse throughout his body or possibly causes him to lose his leg. So unfortunately for Jonathan, he is now out of the game. Back over on the Purple Tribe, we see Amy, who was an original favorite, is deciding to start to build her relationship with some of the fans, including Tracy. She wants to go after Suri as she doesn't really trust Suri, and she is trying to basically get in with the former fans. Back over on Exile Island, we see naive Jason does find Ozzy's fake idol that Ozzy hid on the beach, to which I was absolutely cackling because, like I said, this idol looks ridiculous. It does not look real at all. It is indeed just a stick that Ozzy carved up a little bit. And even when Jason first gets to the idol and sees it, he says that it's not much, but he still believes that it's a real idol. I don't know how anybody could look at this stick and think that it is a real idol, but Jason does. He thinks that he has the idol. It's just overall so funny because this is the most suspicious looking idol I've ever seen. Like, out of all the fake idols I've seen people try to make in my very few years of watching Survivor, this one does not even look real at all. It is so funny. But Jason doesn't really suspect anything. Moving on to the next immunity challenge, we see that the Orange Tribe once again wins immunity, once again sending the Purple Tribe to Tribal Council. Back over on the Purple Tribe, Chet is very close to giving up. He tells everybody he wants to be voted out because he hurt his foot. Tracy and Eric from the original fans don't want to lose Chet just yet, as they need him as a number to go against the favorites. They also want Chet to help them take out Ozzy. Amy, who was trying to build relationships with the fans earlier, tells Tracy and Eric that if they are able to convince Chet to want to stay in the game and to use his vote to vote out Ozzy, Amy will vote with them in order to go against the favorites and take Ozzy out. However, after all of this planning and scheming, it seems as though Chet just really didn't want to be there anymore, and the tribe votes out Chet at tribal council. Moving on to episode 7, we open up on the Purple Tribe, and Tracy and Ozzy are getting into little tiffs and arguments and basically getting on each other's nerves. Tracy is annoyed with Ozzy because Ozzy seems like the guy on the tribe that kind of is just telling everybody what to do, and Ozzy is really annoyed with Tracy because Tracy keeps talking about how she wants to kill the chickens that they have left, and she makes the point that there's 3 weeks left in the game and they can kill off one of the 3 chickens each week in order to have food for the rest of the tribe. But Ozzy wants to keep the chickens around as they have been laying eggs every day, and the eggs are a daily food source for the tribe. Basically, Ozzy and Tracy are getting on each other's nerves. Ozzy then, as the person on the tribe who really does kind of tell everybody what to do, decides that he wants to move the boat to a different part of the beach because I guess there's better fishing opportunities over on the other side of the beach. Suri, wanting to be a team player, agrees to help some of the tribe members row the boat over to that separate beach. But in fact, when they get out to the middle of the water, Ozzy tells everybody that they should stop so he can try and go fishing for a bit, as he says there's probably better fish out in the open sea. To which Suri is not having it. Suri is extremely uncomfortable with this, as she didn't even really want to move the boat in the first place, but she was trying to be a team player for the tribe. And now she is extremely annoyed with Ozzy, who is making everybody stop in the middle of the ocean so he can go fishing. And it was just really annoying for someone like Suri, who was already uncomfortable being on that little boat out in the middle of the open water. And Ozzy really was not caring much about Suri's feelings in that moment. Suri says later on about this moment that it kind of opened her eyes to really seeing how arrogant Ozzy was, and also that she was not going to forget this, which is probably going to be bad for Ozzy later on down the line. At the next rewards challenge, we see that the Purple Tribe wins the reward. They choose Jason from the other tribe and Tracy from their own tribe to be sent to Exile Island. Tracy basically takes one for the team here, as being sent to Exile Island means that she will be the one person from her tribe missing out on the reward. Back over on the Orange Tribe, we see that Kathy is really starting to hate her life. She is straight up not having a good time.
Bro, I'm straight up not having a good time.
And she decides to leave the game after 19 days. To me, it seems so crazy, as Kathy was never really having a good time this entire time, but she had stuck around for 19 days. I would personally feel like at that point, you already did 19 days of this. You're already almost halfway done with the game. You might as well stick around to try and win the $1 million. Like, I truly don't understand. For me, it's like if someone's going to quit, they should quit at the beginning of the game, because how she stuck around for so long and then was like, actually, no, I had enough, is pretty crazy. But all this to say, between Jonathan getting medically evacuated and Kathy quitting, the Orange Tribe is now down 2 members, even though they've been winning their immunity challenges. Back over on the Purple Beach, Suri talks to Amanda about how she is starting to get annoyed with Ozzy. Interestingly, Amanda seems to agree with Suri that she can start to see that Ozzy has a little bit of an arrogant side to him. Now, I'm not sure if at this point in time Amanda really thought that about Ozzy, or if she was just playing up to Suri in order to agree with Suri in this conversation. But they start talking about Eric, as they now see Eric as a threat, as he has now become like this Ozzy fanboy who worships the ground Ozzy walks on and wants to be like them. And they can see that Eric is probably going to be slow to want to turn against Ozzy, and he might be a problem for them later on in the game. At the next immunity challenge, the Orange Tribe once again wins for the third time in a row. Back over on the Purple Tribe's beach, we see that Ozzy is of course pushing to keep Eric in the game, as Eric is a number for Ozzy as they have been getting closer and closer. Ozzy also wants to get rid of Tracy at this next tribal council. However, we do see that Amy is up to her scheming ways again, as she is trying to form a plan with Tracy to get rid of Ozzy. Basically, the plan is that Amy and Tracy want to tell Suri and Amanda that they are voting out Eric, so Suri and Amanda place their votes on Eric. They know that Ozzy wants everyone to get rid of Tracy, so Ozzy is going to be voting for Tracy, thinking that everyone will be voting her out. But in reality, Tracy and Amy's plan is for Eric to vote with them, and all three of them place their votes on Ozzy, which would be enough to get him out. However, at Tribal Council, Tracy gets voted out, so it seems as though Amy decided not to implement her plan and she decided to stick with the original favorites. Moving on to episode 8, we're back on the Purple Tribe's beach, and Eric is realizing that because he's the last fan on a tribe left of all favorites, he fears that he is going to be the next one picked off. Amy is trying to cover up her scheme from the prior episode. She lies to Ozzy, saying that Tracy was the one who had this plan to go after him, which then puts Amy on Ozzy's radar. Ozzy is now upset that his name is on people's radars, but he is also upset because at the prior tribal council, Tracy called him out for being the leader of their current tribe, and he doesn't want to be seen as the person in the forefront of the game making all the decisions and telling people what to do. And he thinks Tracy calling him out as the leader has now planted a target on his back. Moving back over to the Orange Tribe beach, Parvati is smartly working with the girls. She has smartly pulled in Alexis and Natalie from the original Fanch tribe, and she tells them that if they work together with her and James, when they get to the merge, they can reform with Amanda, and then the 4 girls can all work together to get out the bigger guys like James and Ozzy. Before the next immunity challenge, each tribe gets to pick one person from the opposite tribe to sit out of the game, but by doing this, they also give that member immunity if their tribe loses and gets sent to tribal council. The Orange Tribe chooses Ozzy to sit out and get immunity, while the Purple Tribe chooses Alexis to sit out and get immunity. And this all works out for the Orange Tribe because at the immunity challenge, the Orange Tribe pulls out yet another win. Over on Exile Island with Alexis, as they both got sent there being chosen to sit out, Ozzy quickly discovers that somebody found and took his fake idol and fell for the bait. Back over on the Purple Tribe, Eric is desperately trying to stay in the game, so he decides to tell Suri and Amanda about Amy's plan that she formed with Tracy in the prior episode at the prior tribal council, telling Suri and Amanda that they probably can't trust Amy as she was forming a plan to get Ozzy out in the last tribal council. Suri's big dilemma is that she doesn't trust both Eric and Amy, so whoever she decides to vote out at tribal council is going to come down to who she trusts the least, basically. Suri is worried that both Eric or Amy would probably join forces with Eliza, Jason, Natalie, and Alexis once the merge happens. Then there's this amazing, hilarious moment. After seeing that Eric was clearly ratting her out to Suri and Amanda, Amy goes to confront Eric in the most hilarious conversation you've ever seen, because the entire time she is creepily holding a machete, and it is just so funny. You have to watch it. There's even a moment where she starts to point the machete at Eric. It is so funny. Absolutely hilarious. Absolute cinema. Once Ozzy finally comes back from Exile Island, Eric is quick to rat Amy out to him, telling Ozzy about Amy's plans to get him out at the last tribal council. This pushes Ozzy towards wanting to keep Eric, although it seems at this point in time, the girls, Suri and Amanda, are leaning towards keeping Amy, as they think that Amy is the devil they know versus Eric being the devil they don't know. However, the tribe ultimately decides to vote out Amy and keep Eric at the next tribal council. At the beginning of episode 9, we see that Eliza, who has been on the outs for most of the game, is trying to form a connection with Jason from the original fans tribe. Jason also feels like somebody who is on the outs, so he decides to tell Eliza about his idol, which we know is fake. Then it's finally merge time. At the merge, we see that suddenly Alexis is cuddling up with Ozzy, which obviously Amanda, who has been in a showmance with him, is not too happy about this, and she even says that she wants to go after Alexis. This does not look good for Parvati's plan of bringing Natalie Alexis in to work with her and Amanda and form this kind of girl group. Now that the tribes are merged, Parvati is finally able to talk to Amanda again, as they've been on separate tribes. Parvati tells Amanda about this plan that she started, this alliance she formed with Natalie and Alexis, and how Amanda is also in this alliance. Now, Amanda is not happy with Parvati about this. Amanda does not like Natalie and Alexis at this point, and she did not really want to work with them, and she's a little bit upset that Parvati kind of dragged her into this alliance that she doesn't want to be in. Then we see the first individual immunity challenge in which Jason wins. Now that Jason has won immunity, we see him and Eliza form a plan back on the beach to save Eliza and get out Ozzy. Knowing that everybody is probably planning to vote out Eliza, Jason wants to give Eliza his idol, which we know is most certainly fake, in order for all the votes casted against Eliza to be canceled, and then him and Eliza can vote out Ozzy. This would have been a really cool, really fun power play if the idol was in fact real. So we see Eliza go to get Jason's idol in a hilarious moment where she then thinks that Jason is playing her because she looks at this idol and sees that it is clearly fake, as it is just a stick. Seriously, when she saw this idol, it's like,
what is that? Oh my God, what is that?
It looks so stupid to her that she thinks Jason is trying to play her and convince her to use this fake idol. So she is now mad at Jason because clearly this idol is fake and there's no way he believes that this idol is real. However, when she goes back to Jason, he insists that he thinks the idol is real. Eliza is highly suspicious, but at this point in time, she has no other way to save her but to hope and pray that this ridiculous stick is actually a real idol.
It's a stick, I know. It's not the idol.
Why do you say that?
Because that can't be the idol.
Why not?
Because it's just a stick.
I know.
Unfortunately, because she has no other option, Eliza embarrassingly tries to play the stick at tribal council, which we obviously find out is not a real idol, to which Eliza then announces to everybody that that must mean that Ozzy in fact has the real idol and was the one to replace it with this fake. Ozzy does not deny this, to my surprise. So now pretty much everybody knows that he does have the real idol, which I don't know why he wouldn't deny it, but maybe he just thought that with the conclusions that everyone has come to, people would have found out it was him anyways. But unfortunately, the power play against Ozzy did not work, as the stick was not actually an idol, and Eliza gets voted out in an embarrassing way and becomes the very first member of the jury. Episode 10 starts out with a reward challenge in which the tribe is separated into 2 teams of 4. They do another schoolyard pick in order to get their teams, to which Suri, being the person who is not picked, gets sent sent away to Exile Island. And ultimately, a team with Ozzy, Amanda, Eric, and Jason win a reward. We see a scene of James and Amanda talking about how they are worried about how close Parvati has gotten to the fans' girls, that being Alexis and Natalie. Over on Exile Island by herself, we see Suri confirm that she wants to get rid of Ozzy, not just to get rid of a strong player, but to flush away his idol. Next up, we have the immunity challenge, which lasts for over 6 hours. During this challenge, Jeff tries to tempt people to leave the challenge with different types of food rewards. The final two, after 6 hours, comes down to Parvati and Jason. Jeff then tempts the final two with an entire table of assortment of foods in which whoever quits the challenge can share with the rest of the people who are already out. Wanting to eat the food, the rest of the group that's already out promises Jason that if he were to throw the challenge so they can eat the food with him, then they will not vote him out at the next tribal council. However, a few of them, Suri and Alexis, are telling him this with their fingers crossed behind their backs, but let the record show that pretty much none of the people who were sitting out intended to keep this promise to Jason. But ultimately, Jason does naively step out of the challenge, allowing Parvati to win, and everybody really kind of just plans on voting him out anyways. Back on the beach, Suri, who has decided that she wants to get Ozzy out, sees this as the perfect opportunity to blindside Ozzy, as Ozzy now thinks that everybody is planning to vote out Jason for his stupid decision to step out of the challenge. Suri tries to rally Jason, Parvati, and Alexis to vote with her, and she tells them not to tell Amanda or James because she knows Amanda and James are close with Ozzy and would probably be reluctant to vote him out. So now the main question comes, will Parvati stick with what was her original alliance of the Showman's Four of Amanda, Ozzy, and James, or will she decide to go against them, getting out Ozzy and also not telling Amanda and James about her turning on Ozzy? And at Tribal Council, in an amazing, very close 5-4 vote, we see that Parvati decided to make the smart decision to get Ozzy out, turning on her original alliance, but blindsiding Ozzy in the meantime. And it is so great to watch, as Ozzy was such a front runner for the season, and there were so many even of the fans, players that kind of worshipped the ground that he walked on. So seeing him be voted out in a blindside with an idol in his pocket was so fun to watch. So shout out to Suri for forming the plan, and shout out to Parvati for making the choice to turn her back on Ozzy and her original alliance. We then start off episode 11 with Amanda clearly upset with Suri and Parvati for choosing to vote out Ozzy, as Suri and Parvati were supposed to be a part of her original alliance. Later on, we see James confront Parvati about her move, and he asks her point blank who she is planning on taking to the end. Surprisingly to me, Parvati does not lie to James and try to make him feel more comfortable with her, but she just point blank tells James that she wants to go to the end with the girls, which I think was so funny, but also so refreshing to see people just like so bluntly say, yeah, man, I'm not with you. I'm actually with the girly pops.
What is your plan? Who are you taking with you? I'm just curious to know.
To 3?
Yeah.
Girls.
Then they do the famous Survivor auction in which they bid on mystery items. During the auction, Natalie wins the opportunity to send somebody to Exile Island, to which she chooses to send Jason. Now, just to leave a little bit of a note, there is now a new idol on Exile Island because Ozzy got voted out with the idol. So Jason basically has the opportunity to find a new idol on Exile Island. During the auction, there is a disgusting scene involving a chocolate cake in which a few people have the chance to eat a cake, but they only get 1 minute to eat it. So it is very much giving that scene from Matilda, very disgusting. And then later on, once their minute is up, Eric tells Suri that he will give her $20 of his auction money to lick her hands And Suri grossly accepts this, and we see Eric lick cake off of Suri's fingers, which is extremely gross, but I guess these people are extremely hungry.
Something's wrong with that boy.
Over on Exile Island, we see that Jason finds the new idol. He thinks that Natalie sent him to Exile Island on purpose so he could have the opportunity to find the idol, and he assumes that by sending him to Exile Island that Natalie wants to be in an alliance with him. Meanwhile, back at the main camp, Natalie is telling everybody that she sent Jason to Exile Island simply because he's at the bottom of the tribe. Nobody really wants to keep him around, and she's actually telling everybody that she hopes he doesn't find the idol while on Exile Island. Natalie is all for working with the girls, and she makes a plan to try and make Jason feel as comfortable as possible in order to get him to either throw the immunity challenge, or if he finds the idol, to give away his idol or not use his idol at the tribal council. Then it's the next immunity challenge, and we see Eric wins immunity, and it's on his birthday. The girls are ecstatic when they get back to camp after Eric's immunity win, because this now gives them the opportunity to try and vote out either Jason or James. Jason being their main target and James being their backup if Jason uses an idol. The girls then go through Jason's bag and confirm that he does have the immunity idol, but they still hope to blindside him at tribal council. Amanda tries to warn James that the girls are using him as a backup option if their Jason plan doesn't work out. James tells Amanda that he plans on placing a vote against Parvati in order to try and save himself in that situation. However, I don't think this was ever going to work out for him, since the girls were planning to put more than one vote on James to ensure the split vote, meaning that James's one vote against Parvati really wasn't going to do much to help him out in that situation. At tribal council, it seems as though Natalie making Jason feel extremely comfortable worked, and he does not use his immunity idol that he found, and the girls vote him out with an idol in his pocket, essentially blindsiding another person. At the beginning of episode 12, we see that two people are hurt. James, who cut his finger pretty bad and is starting to get an infection, and Alexis, who took a bad fall during the night, to which we get another great hilarious Suri line saying that it's two less people she has to compete against for $1 million. And this is exactly why I love Suri.
I know this is bad because I am a nurse, but that's two less people I have to fight against for $1 million.
At the next reward challenge, the contestants get to see their loved ones, and they are competing for a special jellyfish excursion that they would get to go on with their family member. Alexis wins this challenge, and she's able to pick two more people to come with her along with their loved ones, and she chooses Suri and Natalie. Also being the winner of this challenge, Alexis chooses to send Amanda to Exile Island. Unfortunately for James, we see that the cut on his finger has now become more dangerous as his infection has started to spread. James, much like Jonathan, is forced to be medically evacuated off the island in order to do surgery and to basically save his hand. This being crazy to me that this is the second person to get an infection and have to be evacuated out of the game instead of getting to play the game is pretty sad that we didn't get to see Jonathan and James finish out their games or how well they would have done. It's also crazy that this happened twice in this season where two people got pretty bad infections to the point of them having to get evacuated out of the game, which I don't think I've seen too often in some of the modern seasons that I watched. I don't remember watching a season where multiple people had to be evacuated for very much similar reasons. Back over on Exile Island, we see Amanda following all the clues in order to find another idol. When she gets to the last clue, it informs her that the idol is actually buried back at the original camp. At the next immunity challenge, Eric wins again, and the girls are clearly not happy about this as all the girlies were working together to get the guys out. And with James being taken out of the game for medical reasons and Eric winning the immunity challenge, there is now no guys left to vote out, meaning that the girls are now going to be forced to have to go after each other. Once back at camp from Exile Island, Amanda empties her bag to prove to everybody that she doesn't have the idol. She will later on tell Parvati that she does have the opportunity to try and find the buried idol back at camp, to which Parvati helps distract everybody so Amanda can dig up the idol. It seems everyone wants to vote out Amanda except for Parvati. Eric and Suri tell Amanda that they are going to vote for her. Suri tells Amanda that she would want to stick with her and Parvati, but she doesn't want there to be a tie vote that would force everybody to go to Rocks, which is what would happen if Suri did stick with them. So that's basically why Suri is informing Amanda that she's probably going to vote for her, as she's basically doing it just to save herself, as she doesn't want her fate to be decided by going to Rocks. Then we move on to Tribal Council. In the funniest entrance to Tribal Council I've ever seen, we see James coming in after his recent surgery to help his finger, attached to an IV bag. So that's right, James walks into Tribal Council with an IV bag in hand and attached to one the entire time, which I find absolutely hilarious, as I have never seen anything like that before. At Tribal Council, Amanda blindsides everyone with the hidden immunity idol that she found buried back at camp with the help of Parvati. Since everyone voted her out, none of the votes for her count, and her and Parvati voted for Alexis, meaning that Alexis is the next to leave the game. And yet another blind side. At the beginning of episode 13, it looks like the game might be turning back to a fans versus favorites, as we see Eric and Natalie talking about how if they have the opportunity, they would send each other to Exile Island in order to help the other get the idol. Suri, Parvati, and Amanda plan to stick together as the original favorites. Amanda trusts Suri again, as she knows the only reason why Suri didn't want to vote with her and Parvati at the last tribal was because she didn't know about Amanda's idol and she was afraid of going to Rocks. As well as Natalie is trying to work on Eric to send her to Exile Island, Amanda is trying to work on him to get him to send Parvati to Exile Island under the guise of trying to convince him that Parvati would be too weak to look for the idol. At the reward challenge, we see that the challenge is about who knows the most facts about past Survivor seasons, which is another thing that as a new watcher of Survivor, I have not really seen before. And I find this so funny because as a Big Brother fan, if they ever did a challenge like this on Big Brother, especially in the modern day, nobody would win, as nobody has really watched the show before. Like, they all don't know anything about the show. So it was just funny that like the challenge is who watches Survivor and who's really a fan. To which we see Eric, as he was one of the biggest fanboys, does pull out the win for this reward challenge. After Eric's win, it looks like Amanda's efforts to try to pull in Eric has worked, as he chooses to send Parvati to Exile Island and to take Amanda with him on the reward, which Natalie is now upset about because she thought she had more sway over Eric. Back at camp, Suri is fueling the fire of Natalie's anger about Eric not sending her to Exile Island. All the while, Suri is fueling this fire. She's secretly laughing that Natalie really thought that she had Eric on her side. On Exile Island, Parvati is also secretly laughing at Eric and Natalie. She does not even try to look for the idol, as she knows that she has the numbers with Suri and Amanda, and the only reason for her being on Exile Island was to keep both Eric and Natalie from being able to gain the idol. At camp, Natalie overhears Eric talking to Suri about how he either wants to get her or Amanda out next. Then Eric finds all of the girlies talking to each other, to which he realizes that he has messed up because he has been playing off of them all trying to pull him in lately, and he now knows that telling them all everything that they want to hear has now caused them all not to trust him, as they have all now talked to each other and found out that he has been just telling everybody what they want to hear. So essentially he knows nobody trusts him now, which won't really matter because he will end up winning the next immunity challenge. Then, in one of the most amazing sequences of events in this entire season, Suri wonders if Eric might give up his immunity necklace to Natalie, thinking that they are still in an alliance together. So Suri sparks the idea that sets this whole plan in motion, where the girlies are going to try to convince Eric to give up his immunity necklace at tribal council and then turn on him and vote him out. And now you might be thinking, nobody would ever be stupid enough to give up the immunity necklace at tribal council. Well, Cirie tells Amanda and Parvati to go after Eric hard at tribal council, giving him the illusion that Amanda and Parvati are against him. She also tells Natalie that her and Natalie need to be more quiet at tribal council, so Eric trusts in their plan. However, the one small obstacle in this plan is that Eric is worried that since Parvati went to Exile Island, she found the immunity idol. He says he might consider actually giving Natalie his necklace if both Cirie and Natalie promise to go after Parvati instead of Amanda. Of course, Cirie and Natalie, who really just want Eric to give up his immunity necklace at the tribal council, are going to tell Eric whatever that he wants to hear. So yes, of course, they agree to go after Parvati instead of Amanda, because none of this is going to matter. And then in one of the greatest moments of all time, causing Eric to look like one of the most stupid players in history, Eric naively gives his necklace to Natalie at tribal council. Meanwhile, all of the girls, the Black Widow Brigade is what they call themselves, mind you, work together to vote out Eric. And Eric should have known from the second he took his necklace off that this was the wrong move, as you have to remember that the jury is sitting and watching tribal council, and the second Eric tells Jeff that he is giving up his immunity necklace, pretty much the entire jury is laughing at him. He should have known at that moment he messed up. But he continues to go through with it, thinking that the girls are on his side, when in fact the girls will turn against him and blindside him in one of the best, most entertaining moves I've ever seen, which really only worked because Eric was so dumb in believing them. It's just so funny that when the entire jury starts to laugh at Eric, I don't see how he didn't immediately realize what a big mistake that he made. This was truly great TV. This is cinema. And now we are going into the final four with all women left. That's right. The girlies have taken out all of their competition. The last 4 tribal councils have all been blindsides, and now the final 4 consist of all women in some of the greatest TV you will ever see. Episode 14 starts out with some great Cirie sarcasm talking about the all-woman final 4.
It's tearing my heart out that there aren't any guys around here. Can't you see the tears in my eyes?
Amanda wins the final 4 immunity challenge. Amanda and Parvati have been working together with Cirie since the beginning of the game, but there is a moment where the show makes it look like they are considering possibly voting Cirie out, as they both view Cirie as a huge threat with the jury, in thinking that she would get a lot of jury votes, and she's really good at talking to people and knowing how to sway people. At the same time, Natalie is scrambling, as she can see that her life in the game is so close to being over, and she is trying everything she can in order to stick around. She is really trying to work her relationship with Parvati and to convince Parvati to keep her and vote out Cirie. At the next tribal council, Jeff praises the women for the last episode's tribal council, in which he says that they should all be nominated for a Survivor Academy Award. Amanda and Cirie get into an argument at this tribal council because Jeff kind of makes a comment that maybe there won't be a final 3 this year on Survivor and it will go down to a final 2, to which Cirie says that scares her, knowing that she is probably on the bottom between her, Parvati, and Amanda. Amanda doesn't like that Cirie says this, but in my opinion, Cirie is not wrong, as Amanda and Parvati have been way closer to each other and have had each other's backs and are kind of more of a strong duo, with Cirie as their third. I do believe Cirie when she says that she thinks she's at the bottom of that group, because I do think she is. But Amanda does not like Cirie saying this, and her and Cirie kind of get into it a little bit. The alliance, however, does ultimately stay strong and they vote Natalie out. So in the season of fans versus favorites, the favorites have officially taken over the game. Back at camp, Cirie and Amanda continue their argument. Everything Cirie says about her feeling like she's at the bottom is so completely valid. Cirie realizes that Amanda and Parvati would probably take each other.
Because you're snuggled up over there with James. She's snuggled up over there with Ozzy. Most of the time, y'all four are together. If you were me, what would you feel? I mean, be me for a minute. And because I said it out loud, you're upset? I'm not. With this alliance with y'all two, she told me she couldn't vote you. So that makes me at the bottom of this alliance.
At the end of the argument, Amanda apologizes. She gets pretty emotional. She says that once Jeff said that there might not be a final 3, but indeed another immunity challenge in a final 2, she kind of just had a little bit of a mental breakdown and lost herself a little bit. And they all apologize, but Amanda is kind of going through it in this last episode with her anxiety over there being a final 2. The next morning, the girls find out that there is in fact going to be one more immunity challenge, meaning that there is not going to be a final 3 able to plead their case to the jury, but indeed they are going to lose one more person, which is so horrible for me as a fan of Cirie during this entire game, because it's going to be very hard for Cirie to make it to the final 2 if she does not win the next immunity challenge. Which, at the next immunity challenge, it comes down to Cirie versus Amanda, and Cirie loses her focus for just a second, giving Amanda the final immunity and pretty much putting the final nail in Cirie's coffin, which is so frustrating considering that so many other Survivor seasons there's a final 3 and not a final 2. At the final tribal council, Amanda has the only vote since Cirie and Parvati would just vote for each other, and I'm cackling because Jeff still makes Amanda go up and write her vote down and put it in the little container thing, whatever you call it, in this big dramatic event. But it's like, why does she have to write her vote down and fold it up and put it away like it's a secret? Why couldn't they, Big Brother style, just have Amanda stand up and say who she's putting on the jury and who she's taking with her? I found this whole moment so dragged out and unnecessary, but we will move on as Amanda decides to vote out Cirie and of course take Parvati with her to the final 2. This was so unfortunate for me as a fan of Cirie, as I was so disappointed that she made it all the way to the end and we weren't able to see her plead her case to the jury, because I would have loved to see how Cirie would have pled her case to the jury, because I think Cirie was in a really good position to possibly sway the jury and win the game. But we will move on. The next day at the final jury questioning, we get some of the wildest jury questioning I've ever seen, as multiple people don't even ask a question. Mind you, they let every single jury member come up and they give every jury member the chance to ask each person in the final 2 a question. Eliza does not ask a question, but she uses her time to basically roast both Parvati and Amanda, as she basically calls Parvati a mean girl and she calls Amanda superficial. No questions were asked.
Listening to you talk literally made me want to kill myself sometimes.
Then Alexis uses her time to ask a dumb question. She asked Parvati why she would be a role model to young girls, like that has anything to do with the game. At this point, I'm frustrated because I want to see the jury ask real questions so I can see the final 2 explain their games. But so far, we got one person not asking any questions, although it wasn't entertaining to see Eliza basically roast Parvati and Amanda, sure. But she didn't ask a question. And then Alexis's question is just so completely stupid and has nothing to do with the game of Survivor, as being a role model should not go into who you pick as the Survivor winner, in my opinion. Then, even weirder, we get this insanely weird question from Natalie, in which she asks Parvati about her intimate personal life. And I have no idea what was going on with this question, because to me, it seemed like Natalie was possibly in a roundabout way trying to ask Parvati about her sexuality and questioning that if she's maybe part of the LGBT community. That's kind of what I was picking up from the question.
You flirted with me on several occasions. So, How does being the flirt parallel to your intimate life?
But I looked it up online and I saw an interview that Natalie did way after the fact, in which she claims that the question was basically just to make Parvati uncomfortable by asking Parvati about her personal life. She wanted to see Parvati squirm a little bit and work for her vote, as she was already planning on giving Parvati her vote. So the question was basically meant to embarrass her in front of everybody, which I also think is weird. Either way, very strange, because again, we are not allowing the final two to explain their games in any way. And it's so frustrating because I would love to see how the final two explain the moves that they made and why they deserve to win. And we are wasting so many questions on weird stuff. And this Natalie question was just so incredibly weird. Finally, moving on, we also have Ozzy, who did not ask a single question, but he very emotionally calls out Parvati, saying that she ruined their friendship and she threw away their friendship for money, which honestly surprised me because I never saw Ozzy as somebody who would be a bitter juror, but that is what he's very much giving in this moment, as he's telling Parvati that this game is going to affect their personal relationship and friendship in real life, to which I feel like someone like Parvati only sees the game as a game. So I don't know, this was just really surprising to me that Ozzy would take the game so personally.
How can you say that you're a role model when you're willing to discard a valuable friendship like that? I don't want to talk to you.
And then he chooses his time to tell Amanda that he's falling in love with her instead of asking her a question. So another waste of a jury questioning. Basically, I kind of hated these jury's questions because they had their moment to actually ask each person a valid question to let the person explain their game. And so many people threw away their moment for useless stuff. So that is my biggest complaint about this jury questioning, is what the heck was going on here? What is going on? Ask a question, people. Ask a real question. Mind you, ask a question that has to do with the game and not if a person is a role model and not about their personal life, okay? Everybody votes and we go back to New York City. Who knows how long they had to wait in between being in Micronesia to then going to the reunion where they get the rating of the votes. I'm sure the producers tell the cast they're not allowed to say who they voted for and stuff, but I'm wondering if in between in all this time, they tell them like, hey, Parvati, I voted for you, or like, hey, Amanda, I voted for you. But it's much later after the fact. And then we get the biggest blaring instance of how this season most definitely took place in 2008, because we cut to New York City. Everybody's in their fancy finale night clothes, and Amanda and Parvati are looking the most 2008 I've ever seen anybody look 2008. Both of their outfits, their hairstyle, the side swept bangs, the chunky earrings, it is so 2008. And it's so funny because when you watch a season of Survivor, it feels very timeless. So then jumping to the real world and then just seeing their outfits and stuff, you're like, oh yeah, this was a really long time ago. But overall, it ended up being that Parvati would win Survivor Micronesia in a very close 5-4 vote. And that's the end of the season, to which I say I did have an enjoyable time. Also, on a side note, I did watch the little reunion show, and the biggest thing I took from the reunion show is that Ozzy apologized for his little emotional bitter juror moment towards Parvati that he had at the jury questioning. And he does say that him and Parvati are friends and that he did have like a little bit of a emotional outburst as he was so hurt from being blindsided by Parvati. So there's that. If you were wondering, there is that. But that is Survivor Micronesia. So final thoughts. I really enjoyed this season of TV. I think I do want to watch a few more fan favorite Survivor seasons. I can tell why this is a fan favorite season, as it was just so entertaining. I loved all the girly pops working together to get some of these men out, especially some of these more younger, naive men that were willing to believe whatever they say. I loved the all-woman Final Four. I loved all the blindsides at the end of the game. There were so many people getting blindsided week after week, and it was just so fun to watch. So I do understand why so many people love Micronesia, although I do know some people say it's not really as good as everyone says it is, as a lot of people say, what would have happened if people like James and Jonathan didn't get evacuated? We'll never know, but Overall, I think this season was a really fun time, and that's all I have for you today. If you made it all the way through this video, thanks for watching Survivor Micronesia with me. If you're a Survivor fan, tell me what's the best season of Survivor you've ever watched that I have to watch if I want to become more educated in the history of Survivor. If you like this video, make sure to give this video a like, leave me a comment, click on my channel and check out some of my other stuff. And if you enjoy some of my other stuff, subscribe to my channel so you know when I post more content. But thanks for watching all the way through this video, and I will see you in the next one.